Welcome to Moments with MindLeaps. My name is Rebecca Davis, and I'm the Executive Director of MindLeaps, and so pleased to be here today with all of you for this very special edition. Our guest is just joining us right now, and we are in for a fantastic treat as we have this interview with James Miles. James is joining us right now from New Orleans. Hi James, how are you?
Pretty well. How are you?
Very good. Welcome from New Orleans, I believe.
From New Orleans. I'm in town for this film festival, enjoying myself, eating some vegan po' boys and enjoying the town.
Well, for those of our guests who are not sure exactly who this fascinating person is on our screen right now, James Miles has many titles, of which one is the assistant professor at Seattle University, which you call home now, and also a mayoral appointee of the Seattle Arts Commission, and formerly executive director of Arts Corps, one of my favorite organizations, worked at Mentor in Washington, D.C., executive director currently of Bumbershoot Festival, and I could go on and on and on. But we'll start with those 5 titles, if that
I
sounds
love
okay
it.
with you.
That sounds great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I know that I am very excited for this conversation, and you've heard my excitement. And I want to jump right into it by asking you a little bit about hip hop and how you see the place of hip hop in education. If you have not seen the TEDx talk by James Miles, check it out. We're going to link it to this interview. I just watched it and it changed how I think of hip hop. James, tell us a little bit about the place that you see, the role that you see hip hop playing in education.
Oh, thank you for asking. So hip hop is a global culture. It's more than just the music, the songs we hear on the radio. It is the clothes, the speech patterns, the style of living, the dances, the Twitter feeds. It's all hip hop. If you go across the world and say, put your hands in the air like you don't care, no matter the language they speak, they'll be waving their hands like this, right? As I've said in my TED Talk, I've said it before, everyone from presidents to people across different countries use hip hop slang, dropping the mic at a presidential dinner, or even the term dropping the mic, a shout out. I want to give props to someone. All these come from the hip hop world. And it's the only aspects of the different sectors that hip hop is not inculcated inside of. So if you bring in what young people are digesting on a daily basis, why would they not feel more of a sense of belonging, a way to connect with the content, and a way to see themselves and what's being taught to them? If you try to extricate what their lived experiences are from the school building that they're stuck in for 6 hours a day, not stuck in, but are in 6 hours a day, they're not going to want to be there. So bring in that culture. Talk about the music. Talk about styles. Talk about the visuals. Talk about the social media stuff. Bring it in the classroom, K through higher ed. If you talk about hip hop and the culture connected to what they're learning, we'll have a much better system, much more civically minded student.
And this approach that you talk about is, kind of somehow at some point in education, it seems like we all decided that this is the way that we teach, and it's up to the student to learn according to how we think we should teach. And you've really flipped that idea around, that actually, if you want to be in the field of education, your job is to figure out how that child learns and really shift your approach to the child.
Yeah. Listen to the child. There's an old saying, I can't remember who said it, but if a child cannot learn in the way you teach, you must teach in the way a child learns. So you have to flip the way we talk about young people. They're not empty vessels waiting to be filled by us adults. They have their own plethora of experiences that we can acknowledge, capitalize on, build off, and really support in, their matriculation through life.
It's that cliche statement, right? But as teachers, we always learn more from our students than we teach back to them. But there's the heart of how learning happens inside that, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So James, one of the things that struck me in thinking about how you think about hip hop is then it seems so logical when you explain it, and so kind of, obvious, or of course that's what would work. Why do you think we've been slow to catch on, or what are some of those barriers to why this is not already happening, and why does they need to promote this message?
Yeah, I would say the biggest barrier is the stigma attached to the hip hop music. Ever since 1990, when the Two Live Crew was sued for endangering the public and violating free speech rights. And RICO, they were brought up on RICO charges, right? Racketeering and gang and conspiracy
Oh
charges.
gosh.
Ever since that happened, right? And more young people started to say, like, I listen to this music, and what we hear on the radio is about gunshots or
Yeah.
demoralizing women or
Yeah.
violence or
Oh.
drugs. That's a small aspect of the music. It's what's
Mm.
played on the radio. But as soon
Mm.
as you start talking about like hip hop, that's why, oh, we can't have that in schools. But you say, well, young people are listening to it anyway.
Yeah.
And if these young people are having the same experiences, right, these same structures that preventing them from succeeding, and this is across all socioeconomic and identities, right?
Yeah.
Young people are struggling to feel seen and heard, right? They're not
Yeah.
feeling seen and heard. And this
Yeah.
hip hop expression makes them feel seen and heard, like someone is thinking like me. Even as much as you want to say about Kanye West, what we're talking about now in the community is mental health. That's really
Yeah.
important, right?
Yeah.
If we talk about, Drake and 21 Savage, the new album, they're taking shots literally and figuratively at Megan Thee Stallion. That's important, right? How do we talk about how men treat women and how women stand up? And Megan Thee Stallion came right back and it's like, don't put me in your mouth, right? Like I'm a person, I'm a human being, have some respect on me, right? That's a worthy discussion to have, to talk about gender dynamics, sexuality, violence, popularity and celebrity. These are all content areas that can be discussed in school. And you could take it right back to, the president of the United States in the 1800s. He was a popular president, right? Popular. Why not bring popularity and tie it into what's happening in schools right now? But you have that stigma of hip hop that we can't bring in the music. And I'm not talking about bringing in just the music. I'm talking about the entire culture. Yeah, I rambled on. I get passionate by this.
Yeah, I mean, kind of everything you say, I want to like underline. As you know, a little bit about our work with MindLeaps and
Yes.
using dance as a kind of a non-traditional entry point to get kids excited about education. But it's the same thing. It's like, you go into this one community, it's like, well, what type of dance are you doing and what music are you doing?
Right.
But there's so much more of a universality when you touch the arts. It's not kind of in a box the way I think a lot of people think all of these different art forms have labels and definitions and barriers and obstacles. Like once you jump into the arts, then you start to really get into universal space. And this space, as you say, where like children and youth maybe even more so than children, feel that they have a voice and a place, and there's no reason why they can't stand up and express themselves in like their chosen art form.
Yeah, 100%. This is something Andy Dooley just joined, so I want to say a shout out to her. She used to work with MindLeaps, so super shout out to Andy. But we talk about this all the time, about the power of art to literally change lives and impact civilization. If you look at the history of our world, at the front of every revolution was art.
Yeah.
When we start to destroy, when people say like fascism, the first thing destroyed is the art. It's the books, the visual art, the paintings. They say no more plays, no more talking about this subject in art. There's something to it.
The freedom of expression.
It's freedom of expression. When you bring in the art, you're going to see multiple perspectives. You're going to see a different way of looking at the same kind of content. So, yeah.
Yeah, and at a time, I think, where many of us feel that our country in particular, the United States, especially needs to open up and welcome this diversity of opinions and voices. I mean, the arts, if we can tap into this power that you keep talking about, is like perfectly poised to facilitate how we can do that when, a lot of us like to hold up our hands and be like, that seems like an impossible task, but actually the tool's right there.
Yeah, the tools are right there. And like, I see my boy Carlos just joined. I've known him since high school. We always talk, when we, like as teenagers, we would have conversations about hip hop, and those conversations would take so many different varying paths. And we are still friends to this day based on our love and mutual respect for the art form. Shout out to Fingers. What's up?
So share with us a little bit about the vision for this new festival. You're executive director, if I believe that's correct, right?
Yes, correct.
Of Bumper Shoot Festival, which has one of the most unusual and memorable names of all arts festivals. Tell us what you have planned for the 50th anniversary, where you see this going, why you decided to take on this as one of your main projects right now.
Yeah. So Bumbershoot is the largest music festival in the Northwest. Uh,
Wow.
40,000 people would come to Seattle Center campus and enjoy the culture of festival life, right? You had
Okay.
music, you had visual arts, you had community building, you had food, you had drink. It was a really great event. About 10, 15 years ago, it started to decline. It used to be a free event, and then they started
Mm,
charging. It was minimal costs, and then the
mm.
price skyrocketed probably 1,000% to close to $200 a day.
Oh
It's a
my
2 day
gosh.
festival. Yeah, it was expensive. So you saw 40,000 people coming to Seattle Center in the 80s and 90s, and then when Bumbershoots last year, right before COVID happened, it was 7,000 people showed up,
Oh
and
wow.
I was one of those 7,000, and I was sad. I was like, where's
Wow.
the community? Where's the art? So it fell dormant. COVID, of course, was part of that, why it fell dormant. And then last year, a new group of people said, we want to bring back Bumbershoot. We want to bring it back, have it back in the community, lower the ticket prices. So $50 for the 50th anniversary. We're going to actually keep it even lower than that for some communities. We're working with our partners to lower the cost for youth, especially youth from low-income backgrounds, right? To be able to access the festival. There'll be wrestling, there'll be pole dancing, there'll be geodesic domes that have
This
art
is
inside.
definitely different than a typical
Yes,
festival.
they'll be very different. Pardon me, very different. And also, what I'm excited about, we're building a workforce development uh, uh, track for Bumbershoot, and we're going to be training 10 to 20 young people for the first year
Okay.
in working the festival. So they'll be learning the skills:
Nice.
lighting design, sound design, set design, concessions for the festival as a classroom. So in
Wow.
10 years, this festival will be run by those same young people. That's our goal. We're partnering with many nonprofits in Seattle,
Wow.
in King County, where Seattle's located. And we're really just trying to buttress the community and create a workforce. So when, I teach at Seattle University, when students leave my program and they want to have a career in the arts, their options are LA, New York, maybe Vancouver, maybe
Yeah.
Miami,
Yeah.
Chicago, but very few want to stay in Seattle because there's no art. Now we can. Now we're going to make this happen. So I'm super excited about that for
Oh
the
my goodness,
23rd.
the
Yeah.
employability element is so
Yes.
needed and connects everything back to kind of the very stereotypical real world, right? All of our arts
Exactly.
criticizers are like, yeah, but is it really economic empowerment? And what does it really do to change quality of living? And if they don't believe it on the art side and the creative side or the mental development side,
Right.
you're proving other metrics that can't be debated no matter your perspective.
Exactly. And then think
Wow.
of all the adjacent occupations around, like restaurants,
And the
hotels,
connections, the relationship
connections.
building,
Exactly.
all those
Yeah.
things that you actually need to break into the workforce today.
That's it. That's
Wow.
it. So
Oh my
super
goodness.
excited
So
about this.
tell us, when is it in 2023? When do we
So
come and pay the affordable ticket?
you get in for free, but it's the 50th anniversary is Labor Day weekend,
Okay.
2023, Bumbershoot Festival. We'll start posting our lineups. We have a great selection of people we're looking at, so I'm not going to drop any names yet, but know that there'll be mad love. What's up, Nick? There'll be mad love at the festival. And for those that don't know, Bumbershoot is an English slang for umbrella.
Really?
Hence, since Seattle umbrella, even though no one in Seattle owns an umbrella, it makes sense to have a Bumbershoot festival.
I grew up in Vancouver, Canada,
Oh,
Vancouver.
yes.
So yes, I totally appreciate the umbrella reference.
Thank you. Yes.
James, Seattle is very lucky to have you right now,
Oh,
but
thank
your
you. Thank you.
career has spread across the country and probably around the globe.
Yes.
I know a lot of time in New York City, where we are today on this side of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Also DC, Atlanta, some of my favorite cities. Share with us a little bit about trends, changes that you see across these cities, or if you see one as more kind of at the forefront of educational thinking. What are
Yeah.
some of the differences, similarities that you've experienced?
Let's see. The similarities are that, I've only lived in quote unquote coastal elite cities, except for Atlanta. Uh, but even then, Atlanta is a very large
Yeah,
metropolis. I'm a
close.
big fan of Atlanta. So what I see in trends is like young people and
Okay.
the culture they have, the way they dress. I see
Mm,
that across the nation, the way they speak to each other. There's similarities there. Uh,
love it.
you can go to any city in that I've lived in and say, "Yo, where can I find the spot, the good spot to hear good music?" And the young person will tell you, like, "Oh, go over there. Don't go over there. Go to this way."
Yeah, totally.
Those are the similarities. The differences are, you know, I was raised in Chicago,
Okay.
spent most of my life in New York. It's a very gregarious and
Mm,
friendly people on the East Coast and Chicago.
good choice of
Atlanta
words.
itself. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very gregarious, very affable. Sometimes abrupt. Don't get me wrong. We can be abrupt, but very gregarious. On Seattle, the West Coast, people are less friendly.
Mm,
They're more passive
mm,
aggressive, more insular. They don't like to really go outside of their homes and talk to people they don't know. And I think it's partly because of the transportation. You know, New York,
mm,
you ride the subway with anyone.
yeah.
Chicago the same way. Miami's the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Boston's the same way. Seattle, there's one train that goes up and down. That's it. California, we know about it. You know, LA, like Bart in San
Carp.
Francisco is great, or at the Bay, but LA, you can't really get around by public transportation. So I think that adds to that
That makes
dynamic
sense.
of
Yeah.
insularity. So that's what I feel. You know,
Mm. And what pulled you to Seattle? What made you lose you from New York?
from New York. Well, it's funny. I met the former executive director of Arts Corps at a conference in DC,
Cool.
and I had just quit acting at that point. And I said, you know, I've lived in New York most of my life. I'm looking for a way to move out. My wife at the time was from Seattle, is from Seattle. She's still alive. My wife at the time is from Seattle, and you know, the Arts Corps was in Seattle. I was like, well, if you ever have a job,
Okay.
let me know. And she said,
Cool.
sure. So we talked for years. And finally, she's like, you should just take my job. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
so that's how I got to Seattle. Yeah.
Well, I wish MindLeaps was big enough that one day I could be like, hey, James, take my job. Bring you back to New York.
Bring back. I'll come back to New York. Believe me.
Ooh.
Believe that. Yes.
Okay, well, this will be a side conversation
Yes.
afterwards. Okay, so I recently learned that among the many titles of James Miles, Fresh
Yes.
Professor, one of them is clown.
Yes. I used to be a clown.
Clown
Yes.
acting, executive directors of 3+ organizations, assistant
Yeah.
professor, mayoral appointee. What is one of these incredible accomplishments that stands out for you?
My greatest accomplishment was working with a dynamic team of people on arts education.
Wow.
That's the best thing I've ever done. Like
Wow.
when I was on the set of the Michael J. Fox show. I was talking to Michael J. Fox, and oh my God, his name just left my mind. He was on The Wire. Wendell Pierce. Wendell Pierce. So I was talking to both of them on the Michael J. Fox
Cool.
show, and Wendell was talking about how much he loves teaching, and he was from Louisiana, where I happen to be right now. And he says, if I wasn't acting, I'd be teaching. And Michael J. Fox was like, I'm doing this to put a face to Parkinson's,
Yeah.
so people to normalize that it's a thing.
Yeah.
It needs some help to get funding
Yeah.
to cure Parkinson's. It needs to be addressed. And I said, I need to do that for education. And so
Mm,
I finished my scene and walked off the set. I was like, that's it. I'm done
that
acting.
was the moment?
That was the moment. That was the moment.
Wow.
Yeah. And I called my friend and I said, I need a job because I'm stopping acting. And he hired me as a part-time, shout out to Michael Wiggins, hired me as a part-time high school coordinator. And I started working with these great group of people. And that was it. That was my biggest compliment, that I was allowed to work with them, you know, from Jamel to Ebony to Nick, who was on here, to all the educators in Brooklyn and Washington Heights that I was able, and
Yeah.
Queens that
Yeah.
we were able to work with. That was it. That was it. I'm just lucky. I'm lucky to have worked with them.
Yeah. Gosh, wow. The moment kind of when such a clear decision can be made is
Yes,
fascinating, and so much kind of what people say about life is the opportunities are there, but did you recognize them, right?
exactly,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah,
okay, so now currently one of the other hats that you're wearing in Seattle is with the Seattle University as an
yes,
assistant professor, and I was trying to like get the answers out of you earlier.
right.
Is this because you feel like that's the way to influence the next generation of professors, or Is this because it's connected to the fabric of Seattle? What makes you hold the professorship right now?
One, as a fresh professor, I had to actually be a professor.
To match it.
So I had to match it. But I started teaching, I taught at NYU for about 8 years before moving to
Okay.
Seattle. And it was something I really loved. Even before I was, working with my hip hop collective, I was teaching teacher education. And I really enjoyed preparing the next generation of educators to work with
Okay.
youth in ways that were culture responsive, uh, increased sense of belonging,
Yeah.
boosted rigorous mindsets and growth mindsets. So when I came to Seattle,
Cool.
I wanted to do something like that. And then I saw there was a dearth of creativity in the city of
Mm.
Seattle. So I was like, well, how do I do both? So I'm teaching
Mm.
the performing arts and arts leadership program. So preparing the next generation of arts leaders and the next generation of performers that are all going to operate and will operate and do operate, in a very critically conscious kind of way. So that, and then connections with the city, really supporting the community of King County, Washington State, the United States, anyone that comes to Seattle University, in bringing and enlivening the creative workforce and the creative sector of our beautiful city. So that's what got me
Oh my
into
gosh.
Seattle University. Yeah.
I got to call out this like rigorous mindset. So now when I say call
Yes.
out, I think of like hip hop. You're like really changing the way I think very
Yeah,
quickly.
no doubt.
uh, but yeah, so like when you say rigorous mindsets, I think that's like such a beautiful way to kind of think about how we develop those skills, right? That there's
That's
like
right.
not just a sense of development, but there's like an intensity, there's like a training behind it, but
That's
also it
right.
allows for like space and innovation and growth and change and
Hmm.
flexibility, which is just like, if education could do that and if educators could do that or help us do that as students of life,
Right.
how more seeds and threads that we need to piece together could be built.
Yeah.
Gosh, like I think, when I went through school, I did my undergrad is in business and it was business
Hmm.
entrepreneurship. And like the most useful thing in like my 4 years, I hope it's okay that I'm saying this online, was like writing the actual business plan. And like,
Yeah.
it's not like that was the great business plan, but the practical element of it. And to hear that you're doing that with arts leaders inside the educational setting, and then actually connecting it to the community so they get the practical side at the same time as they're
Yes.
getting the theory side. I mean, that could be transformative for arts education and arts leadership.
That's my hope. Every one of my students at Seattle University, which I hope they heard you about this business plan, because that's their final assignment. Do it.
Oh yeah, that's the good part. You should do it.
Yeah, that's the good part. Every one of these students is invited to work with me at Barbershoot, and
Oh,
of course,
lucky
my
students.
network of organizations. I want to be able to set up every young person. When I say young person, that's any student who may or may not be older than me. Any student at Seattle University, set up to work, thrive, and really cherish working in the arts in this beautiful city of Seattle.
Wow.
It's a lovely city, and I just want to buttress the work that's already being done, support the artists that have yet to find their path, and uplift everyone involved in the creative industries across the world. That's
Yeah.
very important
Yeah.
to me. So
Oh
if I can keep
gosh,
doing that.
this is so exciting to watch how this is going to grow.
Thank you.
um, so okay, my last question. I mean, as I think
Yes.
you know, I would really love it if this interview could be like 4 years long, but
Right.
actually it's 30 minutes long.
Right.
Okay, what is one thing that over this journey of life and working with so many different people and communities that you kind of see as a repetitive pattern? Like, I wish people knew this, or I wish people were aware of this. Like, what's kind of that one thing that you think is like the universal blind spot, or not mistake, but
Hmm.
the thing that like if you could kind of just change this and like a bunch of people all at once, you would do it.
Yeah. It would be listening. I think just listening to each other, listening
Wow.
to understand, not listening to respond. Uh,
Ah,
my man Lewis is online, and we've texted about this recently, and I'll be seeing him in a couple weeks. But really listening to each other, whether you disagree or agree with someone, listen to them. That's the biggest thread I've ever, and
so good.
throughout all the work I've done. my staff, I've listened to them. Even when I've messed up tremendously, and I have messed up tremendously, right? I want to acknowledge that. I listen to them. Why did I mess up?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let me address my own inaccurate or in efficacies. You know, I want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to really
The
work.
changes. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to change. I want to be able to
Yeah.
change with the culture, what the people are saying. I don't want to keep promoting the same thing if no one
Right.
wants to do that. My
Yeah.
one realization I had, I brought in Talib Kweli's music to one of my students, and I was like, it was he did a revision or redone of Nina Simone's For Women, and I was like, yo, this is such a great song, and I brought it to the students. And the students are like, yo, we don't care about Talib Kweli, and I was like, but it's Talib Kweli, and they're like, yo, but we don't listen to him right now. We listen to so and so, and I was like, oh. So I was like so impassioned. I was like, "This is great," and I was like, "What? I'm
So
doing
true,
this wrong."
right?
And shout out to Talib. Talib's amazing. I think if I brought Talib in now, it'd be a different story. But that's to be stated. I realized I had to listen to what the youth were
Yeah.
saying, and I realized that wasn't just the young people. It was everyone in our world. We don't listen to each other enough. So that's the one
I
thing I would say. Yeah.
and I think just listening to understand, because
Yes.
gosh, it's so often, as you say, like listening to respond, like, okay, I understood this, this is my rebuttal, I understood this,
Right.
this is my rebuttal, right? So it's like a back and forth, but it's not really a conversation, right?
Yeah.
But listening to understand is, yeah, a powerful way to think about listening.
Yes. That's
Uh,
it. That's
I'm
it.
gonna hold on to that one.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Deborah. Yeah.
Uh,
My share. Yeah, no doubt.
Um, yeah, as you know, James, we are huge fans of you at MindLeaps and around the world because you bring a kind of a incarnation or realism to all these things that we think might be true or that we think might be important. And
Mm-hmm.
you're representing that voice on a global stage. And it is so awesome to have an advocate like you for the arts and education.
Oh,
I
thank
hope
you.
your
Thank you.
voice just gets amplified like every minute of your life.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Well, plug next year comes my next book, Gotta Stay Fresh. It's a teacher's guide for educating the new world. So look for that. I'll definitely do a shout out. I'll give you a copy.
Aw.
Yeah.
Gotta stay fresh. See, and like
Okay.
I said, Fresh Professor, every time I touch you, I learn something new about you, like your new book.
Like my new book. Yes.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, gotta stay fresh. We will check it out. We will post on MindLeaps when it's out. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
this important information with us. And thank you so much, James, for spending time with the MindLeaps community. We are so grateful.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been lovely.
Awesome. Go enjoy New Orleans. And thank you so much, everyone, for being with us.
I will. Take care.
Bye bye.